In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to use Flask WTF to create forms. And before we do that, we need to add a little bit of configuration and also to make sure that our forms are secure. So we'll start out by adding some configuration to Flask app.py. Oh, sorry, actually it's going to be in the config.py. So go to config.py right here. Usually you wouldn't want to record the contents of a file that has your passwords in it for your database, but this is just practice. It doesn't matter. I've already added some configuration that's the secret key, and this is going to be used to generate some tokens, and Flask WTF is going to do this automatically. It just needs you to choose a secret key, and all you have to do for a secret key is a long string that nobody's going to easily guess. So whatever you want, just some random letters, or you can go to some website and have them generate one for you, then just paste it in here. So save. Next, I want to make sure if people are going to be submitting forms with passwords that they're submitting these messages in using an encrypted channel. That way, if someone is eavesdropping on the conversation or intercepting the messages, they will just get an encrypted message that will seem like a jumble of random things, and they won't be able to figure out what the password is. So to be able to do that, we want to use something called Flask SSL. SSL stands for Secure Sockets Layer, I believe. Secure Sockets Layer. So we are first going to go to the Bash console, and we're going to install this because it does not come by default on Python anywhere. So pip 3.6 install, and then the name of it is Flask SSL in capital letters, and then IFY in lowercase letters. It's probably going to say I already installed it. Alright, now we're going to go into the Flask app, and I'm going to add an import. So I'm from Flask SSL if I want to import SSL-ify. Alright, now let's use this. I'll put it down here right after bootstrap SSL-ify dot and then pass in app. And then that is it. You can go ahead and save and run this. And if we go back here and refresh, you can see that the web pages are secure right up here. So you see this little lock, and you'll see it's using HTTPS. So you just want to make sure, especially on a page that has a form where someone is going to press submit, that this is a secure connection so that no one will be able to see the contents of their form except for you. Alright, next let's create a registration form using Flask WTF. So this is already available by default on pythonanywhere.com, so we don't have to install it, we just have to import it. So I'm going to say, so from Flask WTF, I want to import Flask form. Then from Flask WT, no, not Flask, but from WT forms, I want to import some of the different fields that you would put in a form. So a string field, a password field, and also a submit field. I'm going to create a submit field, which is going to just be the button. And then also I want to validate the information that people are putting into the forms. So I'm going to import some validators. And I'm going to import input required and email, then length. These are going to be some validators that the user can fix right away. Like if they accidentally write something that doesn't even make sense as an email, instead of sending it all the way to the server to figure that out, this is going to just create some code that will validate it and tell the user, give the user a little error message saying this doesn't look like an email, and help the user to change it before hitting the submit button. Alright, now we've created forms before. Let's go to the let's go take a look at register.html. It involved typing a lot of HTML, and most of these Flask extensions are designed to help you so you don't have to type all of this HTML. You just create something in Python, and then the HTML will be generated for you. So all of this stuff that's in this giant form, we're going to be able to replace by something very simple. But first we have to create that form in the Flask app. So I'm just going to create it underneath the model. So maybe I'll make a little space right here. I'm going to create a Flask, and I'll call this one register form. It's going to extend Flask form, one of the things that I imported. And you just create the fields that you want. I'm going to make a simpler version of the registration form than the one that we originally created. But if you want to add extra fields, you would just do it similar to how I'm doing it right now. I want the name of this first field, the thing that's displayed to the user, to be username. But the actual name of the field is going to be username lowercase. So username, and then I want to do some validators right here because I want to make sure that the user definitely inputs something, so you don't just have an empty username. I also want to make sure that the length of it is a minimum of 4 characters and a max of 15. Alright, so there is the first field, string field. I'm going to go back, I'm going to create one for email. It's also going to be a string field. And I'll have it show up as email for the user. And then I want some validators. It's going to be, let's do the input required one again. We'll make sure that it's required for the user to input this. Also add the email validator that checks to make sure it looks like an email. And that will be the end of that one. One more password, and I'm going to make this a password field. That way that when the user's typing it in, it'll just show up as little dots instead of as the actual letters that they're typing in. And for this one, I want to make sure that they do a password that's long enough, but not too long. So we'll just say min equals 8, and we'll say that they have a maximum of 80 for their password. We're going to have to store all of these things in the database eventually, so we want to put some sort of limits on this so that we don't just put gigantic things into the database. Come to think of it, we should probably add a length restriction to this email. Maybe we'll add a max of, I don't even know how long emails get. Probably shouldn't be much longer than 100 characters, 150. We'll put that. Just so someone doesn't try and type in 10,000 or a million letters and have us store their giant email that's not even a real email. Alright, so that is the form created. Oops, forgot one field. I want the submit field. It's just going to be equal to a submit field, and this is going to be shown as a button, so I'll just type what I want the button to say. Alright, I hit save, so there's my register form all done. And then if I want that to be shown on the web page, I'm going to have to go into the template. So right here, just going to delete everything with the form, and instead I'm going to use something that I need to import. So I'm going to import something from the Bootstrap folder, which is available because we're using Flask Bootstrap, and it's called WTF.html. This is WT Forms. It has some functions that are helpful for creating forms, and I'm going to import it as WTF. So I just give it a name so that I can refer to it. So I'm now going to refer to it, WTF, and I'm going to use one of its functions, and the function is called quick form. And what this does is takes a form and then just quickly renders it. And I could do it just like that, but I'm going to add a little bit more because I want the button to be blue instead of white. So I'm going to add a button map that says that I want the submit button to have the color of primary. And this is a Bootstrap color. If you want to look up more about Bootstrap colors and their names, you can just search for Bootstrap colors. Take a look. We're using Bootstrap 3, but I think it's the same in Bootstrap 4. You can see they have these different colors depending on if it's info, warning, danger, success. So I'm calling it primary, so the button will show up as blue. Let's go back. So button map primary, and then I will finish that function and then close with the 2 curly braces. So that huge form of HTML is now replaced with this one function that just quickly generates all that HTML for us. The only problem right now is if I go try and, so if I restart and try and do the register page, it'll probably show me nothing. Refresh, it says there's an error, and I can take a look at the error. It's probably going to say that it doesn't know what form is. It tried to make a quick form using form, but it's undefined, and that's because I didn't pass the form into the template renderer. So I'll go back to Flask app and I'll go find my registration page right here. Yeah, I need to make sure to pass in a form. So I need to say that form equals something. So and now the question is, what do I want it to equal? So up here, I'm going to create a form. I could have called this registration form because it's going to be, let's see, did I call it register form or yeah, register form. Register form. So I'm going to create myself a register form. And I'm also going to make it so that if people want to submit their forms here, they can not only get the form, but they can also submit them. So the way to do that is you add something called methods. And I'm going to create a list. And one method is get. That allows you to get the form so that you can first fill it out. It gets you an empty form. And then when you hit the submit button, it's going to use the method of post. And this function is going to handle both cases. So whether you got an empty form or are submitting a filled form, this function is going to handle both of those cases. It's possible to handle them separately, but we'll see that it's pretty convenient to do it right here using Flask WTF. So we just created this form, and now we're going to say if the form is, so we're going to say validate on submit. So that is going to try and fill the form with the information from this post if the user filled the form, but if they didn't, then this is just going to be false. And then it'll skip this whole section and just return an empty form. And the form that we're going to return is this one that we created up right here. So remember, on the right hand of the equal sign is the name of the variable, and this is the name of the parameter in the function. In this case, they both happen to be the exact same thing, which is pretty common in Python. All right, but let's say what we should do if someone has filled out the form. Eventually, we're going to want to store that information in the database, but we're going to leave that till the next tutorial. So for now, just to make sure that it's working, I'm just going to return a string that puts all the information together. So for example, in the form's username field, I'm just going to get the data that the user entered, and I'm going to add it to a comma and a space. And then I'm going to get the form, I'm going to get the stuff that was in the email field, and I'm going to add it to another comma and a space. And then I'll get the last thing, the form.password.data, and then I'm just going to add all those together, concatenate them into one big string, and then I'll just return that. So this is not HTML, so it's not going to look very pretty. It's just going to return some information just to prove to me that the information went all the way to the server. I was able to add some commas in, and then I sent it back to be displayed on the user screen. You would never want to do this in real life because you don't want to display the password that the user just typed in secretly on their screen where anyone could see it. But in a future lab, we're going to remove these lines, and instead of doing this, we're going to store all this information in a database. All right, let's save this, restart the app, and let's go over here and refresh. And we can see this time now there is a register form. Let's say that I wanted to just type in a 3-letter username, and then I'll just say that my email is my email. Right, this is wrong. Then I'll do a password that's only 4 letters long. If I try to do this, you'll notice that the validators are going to kick in, and it's going to tell me there's problems with everything. So this field must be between 4 and 15 characters long, so I'll just change it to Mike. This must be, it's supposed to be a valid email address. So I'll just say me@me.com, and then the password needs to be between 8 and 80 characters. Password. All right, now I'll go ahead and hit register. So it's asking me if I want to save this password. I'll say never for this. And notice how it did make it all the way to the server, and it took my name, added a comma, the email, added a comma, and then the password. I just typed password for the password, and then it displayed it right here. So it looks like everything is working. We're going to change it in the next tutorial so that instead of doing this, it stores it in the database and welcomes the user. But for now, it looks like everything is good. So I'm going to go to the Bash console. I'm going to make sure to commit all my changes. Let's see, I made changes to register and Flask app. That seems correct. I'm going to take a quick closer look at the changes. Looks like I added some changes to use WT forms, and this use SSLify, that looks right. I keep hitting the space bar. I added a register form. I changed the register route so that it would handle getting the form and also posting, so filling out the form. Everything looks the same, and then we deleted all of that HTML from the form that was typed in, and then we replaced it with one small function that generates the form. Everything looks good. I'm at the end of the differences, and I hit Q, and so I'm ready to commit. So I'm first going to add all of these changes so they're ready to commit. I can see that my status right now has some staged changes. These are green and ready to be committed. So I'm going to git commit. And let's see, I'll just say switch to using Flask WTF for forms. All right, that's the end of this tutorial.